Which celebrity death still upsets you? Christopher Lee, rest in peace. Edit, I'd just rather have him alive, still. James Gandolfini was upsetting to me. Sopranos is still a show that gets replayed when I don't have anything else to watch. Alan Rickman, Heart, Broken Heart. Steve Irwin. He could have done so much more for animals, and ironically his life was cut short by one. His son Robert is following in his footsteps, and it's honestly very heartwarming to see. Grant Imahara from Mythbusters, a kind soul, a truly great engineer, and a fun Twitter follow to boot. A lot of folks on here had lived long lives, or got into drugs, which is horrible too, but at least partially controllable. But Grant? Just, here one day, and dead the next. Intracranial aneurysm. Anton Yelchin, it was a freak accident. He was a really good actor and had so much more life to love. Brittany Murphy. She was so underrated it was criminal. John Candy. He was the first time in my young life I actually felt sad a famous person had died. He was a comedic genius. Payne Stewart. The plane he was on lost pressure and killed everyone on board. The plane flew for hundreds of miles with no pilot before it crashed. Phil Hartman. Robin Williams. Jim Henson. I can't be the only one saddened there's not more Muppet weirdness in the world. Heath Ledger, and also Carrie Fisher. Bernie Mac. Every time he would pop up in a movie you knew you were in for a treat. Karen Carpenter, I loved her and her music so much. Rickman in the Field. Fred Rogers. John Ritter. Anthony Bourdain. Robin Williams, who was the voice of my childhood, and Philip Seymour Hoffman, who was a brilliant actor. Celine, I wasn't even born yet when Yolanda killed her. Her story has always upset me. I'm still not over Neil Peart passing away. Grant Imahara. He was incredibly influential to me during my teenage years across all of the projects he was affiliated with. His work on Mythbusters, BattleBots, and Star Wars are all things that stick out in my brain when I think of anything science-related. Guy was incredibly talented and left us entirely too soon. Chadwick Boseman. George Carlin. I'd absolutely love to see his stuff on today's issues. Phil Hartman. It was just so unnecessary. Gord Downie of the Tragically Hip. Having a beer with him was on my bucket list. Cameron was my childhood. Chris Cornell, man, had the most legendary voice. Stan Lee. He was like the grandpa that remained the hip kid of every decade he was a part of. Betty F.K.N. White. Knew she couldn't live forever, but part of me hoped. Chris Farley. Tom Petty, definitely. The soundtrack of life has a lot of Tom Petty songs. Avicii. He died way too young but gave the world some great music. Christina Grimmie. Murdered in cold blood by a psychopath just at the start of her career. Robin Williams. Mr. Rogers. Steve Irwin. Basically all the ones that were just known good people. Gene Wilder, he just made everyone happy. Sure wish COVID didn't get John Prine. Kurt Cobain. Bill Paxton's death still messes me up. Dude was in every movie I loved as a kid and was the catalyst for me getting interested in studying weather due to Twister. That one hit close to home. River Phoenix. Freddie Mercury. Amy Winehouse. Chester Bennington. Stephen Carl Stephenson. He made my childhood. I was so heartbroken. Robin Williams. Patrick Swayze. Amy Winehouse. Jim Varney. We miss you, Ernest. Norm Macdonald. The dude was the ultimate giga chad. What anyone else has to say about it. Naya Rivera. So tragic. Rick Mayall. Steve Irwin, and Robin Williams. Christopher Hitchens. It's been a decade and no one quite fills his shoes. Chadwick Boseman. Betty White. Robin Williams. Prince. Goddamn fentanyl. Dolar O'Riordan. Prince, it was sudden and came out of nowhere. He's been one of my favorite artists ever since I was a kid, even when I didn't realize it then. Aaliyah. I still remember my dad telling me when I got home from a night out with friends. I remember where I was standing. I remember what went through my mind. Shit was crazy sad. There are a lot actually, but Robin Williams, just sad on all counts. Ray Liotta. Brittany Murphy. Great girl, makes me sad whenever I think about it. Princess Diana, yeah, I know she wasn't a princess, she will always be one to me. Alan Rickman, and somehow extra because he was one of the celebrities who died in January 2016. That month when it seemed every day another celeb passed away. Brittany Murphy. Eddie Van Halen, I don't care what you think. Judith Barcy Ducky from The Land Before Time. Mr. Rogers. We need him now more than anything. Heath Ledger's death definitely. Whitney Houston. Such a beautiful and talented woman, and the damn drugs destroyed everything. Adam Ute. I haven't seen anybody mention him yet, but George Michael's death was so tragic. He lived a troubled life, but he was just an amazing person with an amazing voice. Gone far too soon. David Bowie. Sean Locke. Terry Pratchett. Alex Trebek. Everyone, please type the Jeopardy theme, crying face. Anna Nicole Smith. John Lennon. Mac Miller. Kobe Bryant and his daughter. Wasn't much fan of sports in general, but that was really stalking. Sad face. Alex Trebek. Sad that nobody mentioned John Belushi. His death is the first one that really shocked me, as a teen. At the height of his fame, he changed American comedy forever. Moment of silence. Johnny Cash and John Ritter. That was a shitty September. Douglas Adams. Amy Winehouse. She was so young and talented, she just couldn't handle the fame and money. Plus she was a love junkie and was easily influenced by the men in her life. I think if she had a few more years to get her shit together, she would have done amazing things. Bill Hicks, George Carlin, Greg Giraldo, Patrice O'Neill, Mitch Hedberg, Norm Macdonald. Bowie. I just keep thinking there's a lot of great music we'll never get to hear. Eddie Guerrero, Princess Diana, Jonathan Brandis, Neil Peart of Rush. Only time in my life I cried at the passing of someone I've never met. He left behind an 8-year-old daughter. He wanted to be done with touring for a while, but stuck it out for his bandmates and his fans. Was finally living the life he wanted to live, and bam, brain tumor. Such a shame. David Bowie. Truly tragic. Carol Lombard. David Bowie. The world is a less interesting place with his absence. Lemmy. David Bowie. Lane Staley. Truly brutal to see drugs grind him down into a feeble recluse before his death. Brittany Murphy. Amy Winehouse. Robin Williams. Chester from Linkin Park. Frowning Face. Technoblade and Kobe Bryant. Oh, also Eazy-E. Anton Yelchin. Caroline Flack. Steve Irwin. Hands down. He inspired my love of animals and nature. I know this sounds ridiculous, but when I heard he had passed away, I told my mom I needed to stay home from school. I stayed in bed all day and cried. Rickman in the Field. David Bowie. Cue the down boats. The death of Kobe still hits differently, man. Feels like the whole world has changed drastically since the death of him and everyone on board that helicopter. Cameron Boyce. Chadwick Boseman. Rick Mayall. Yasmin 28. Singer 29 ? Profs Flo 1, a Belgian singer who took her own life. She sung a lot of empowering songs for women in the Dutch language, such as Porcelain and All Girls in Charge, not in a feminist way, but an inspiring way. I have looked around, but never found any English covers, sadly. Now, in itself, her death itself is not what was most upsetting, even while it was totally unexpected for me, even while people around her knew she wasn't doing so well, but her death was completely overshadowed as Michael Jackson and Farrah Fawcett also passed away mere hours after she did and completely hogged the spotlights, kinda. She was forgotten so fast, which was undeserving. Wow. None of the top comments so far said Michael Jackson. He was a musical legend. I'm surprised. Do people on here hate him or something? Taylor Hawkins. Stan Lee. Many people were distraught when it made the news that he died. I'm surprised he isn't higher up in the comments. TBH. Avicii. I grew up listening to his music and hearing it now hurts a little. Tom Petty. My dad took the family to see him at Freedom Hill 3 months before he died. It killed me for an entire day at school. John Denver. Prince. So much music left. Bruce Lee. And Moreso. Brandon Lee. David Bowie. Johan Cruyff. Nate Dogg. Chadwick B. I guess it's because he did so much in film after his diagnosis, and tried his best to hide it. I remember the FB memes poking fun at his thin frame and calling him a crackhead. The second would be Kobe. Paul Gray and Joey Jordison. John Candy. Malcolm X. Natalie Wood. Robin Williams. David Bowie. Technoblade. Chris Cornell. Chester Bennington. Makes me sad to think even some rock stars don't want to carry on. Olivia Newton-John. Kobe Bryant. 5 comics in particular. George Carlin, Bob Saget, Norm Macdonald, Robin Williams, and Gilbert Gottfried. All influential and important comedians in their own special ways. Jim Henson. I was 9 when I heard the news on the car radio, and I still remember exactly where I was. He spent his entire life fighting for funding and had just inked a deal with Disney that would have given him immense financial freedom. He was a legitimate genius, and I don't think he had begun to peak creatively. He died of toxic shock syndrome due to an infection. It's very likely that he would have survived if he had gone to the hospital just a few hours earlier. Steve Irwin. Robin Williams.